Esta mañana el tema principal será la sustentabilidad y para ello ya nos acompaña de manera online desde Alemania Sebastian Winkler, vicepresidente de Digital Business Siemens Large Drives Alemania. Sebastian, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you for this conversation. The topic of this year, Minerals Week 2022, is digital mining and sustainability, Sebastian. Can you explain how these two topics are linked together?
Yeah, so sustainability has become really a core topic for all the businesses around the globe. And I think if you look at sustainability, it defines as three things. Essentially, one is about environmental, it's about social, and it's about corporate governance. And from our perspective as Siemens Large Drives, we are really committed to all of these three, of course. Now, with the most recent developments around the climate, the environmental aspect, of course, becomes very, very critical, respectively to carbon footprint, energy consumption, and of course also material usage. And of course, nothing is done, then this will mean a significant temperature increase over the next 100 years. With all the devastating effects, and also, of course, it will damage to a significant amount the value creation in the next decades to come. So if you look at drive systems and the solutions, like we present as Siemens Large Drives, we can be part of the answer. Sustainability is part of the answer for this climate challenge. And this, of course, comes because there is a principal need for electrification.
Right. Because
electrification is a significant game changer to conventional drive systems. Absolutely. Like combustion engine turbines. And secondly, there's a lot of different applications in different fields, from water pumping for fresh water or clean water, like I think it's also a topic in Chile, a very important one about water scarcity. The same like carbon capture, geothermal, or hydrogen storage and processing applications. So in essence, you can say it's about green tech, and at the same time, it's about digital, because digital, with all this data and intelligence which comes from data, will be a significant contributor to sustainability. Because very certainly and simply, with information and data, you make much better decisions. With better decisions and smarter decisions, you make better actions. And this really translates into better usage of material and, of course, optimizations along the value chain. So in essence, I would say there is digital mine already at the core of sustainability. And maybe in different words put, there is no sustainable mine without digital mine.
Digitization gives us the tools in order to achieve those sustainability goals, right?
Yes, so I think that's an important aspect you're pointing out there. Of course, you need the underlying green tech technologies, because at the essence, of course, you have a real world where you make impact by the choices you make of the infrastructures to put into place. Also in mining, the choices you make, how you power your operations. And at the same time, of course, with digital, you practically enhance what you do with these installations, these machines. And if you look at specific processes in mining, like for example, the concentration in the mining process, then there you find a lot of electrical components, which do, of course, already consume a lot of energy themselves, but at the same time, you have a very strong leverage with digital to optimize here and basically also help reducing energy consumption, optimizing the CO2 footprint with this, and of course also the material usage.
Right. Hey, Sebastian, how does digital mining influence sustainability in the mining operations? If we can give some examples about this.
Well, I think if you look at the global numbers, there's about 4 to 7% CO2 footprint coming from the mining operations. I think in Chile, the mining sector at this point in time consumes about 25 terawatt hours of energy. It's predicted to grow because, of course, mining with all the material coming out of Chile are very essential inputs and supplies for a lot of electrical components we use in all the different industries. And also, I think the mining sector in Chile is about representing 20% of the entire CO2 footprint. And so if you look now at digital and digital platforms like we entertain with Z-Drive IQ, it really is an angle to manage the fleet of installed equipment much smarter. And practically, if you look at Z-Drive IQ as an example of a digital platform, it comes with all the elements of acquiring data from the field, of course, processing the information through machine learning, AI, digital twins, and then bundling this up with service execution, of course, in the real world, because only data is not enough, right? You need to actually do something then with the data and the information you have in the real world. And if you look at examples on that, I think the impact of digital stretches across the entire product life cycle. So basically, it starts already at the design and engineering when an operator of a mine would basically make a decision on which kind of equipment to choose in terms of the capacity, the sizing, also maybe with regards to the CO2 footprint ambition he is planning to accomplish in the next years and decades. The second step is most certainly, of course, during operations, because in operation you actually expose the equipment to its use. So that's actually when a lot of energy usage and CO2 generation is happening. And with digital, you practically are able to monitor, of course, all the data coming. You're able to anticipate failures and prevent them. And of course, if you prevent failures, you reduce downtime, and downtime is typically very costly, and you have a lot of energy loss during a downtime moment, and also in the restart of a manufacturing or production process.
Right.
And also, if you look at energy systems themselves, like motors, there's opportunity to optimize the motor from the data to give them better set points in terms of the process and the underlying media which are produced. Or you look at things like conveyor systems, for example, which have the capability to generate even a certain level of energy by the physics and the transported material. And I think that's important levers on operations, on how you can contribute on a daily basis practically with digital tools there.
Sure.
And then, of course, there's service. And with service, there's obviously all this entire remote support capability, which is, I think, also a big topic. In Chile, there's companies like Anglo operating remote operation centers out of Santiago, the Chilean, and you can extrapolate this into other topics like support during downtimes, and the way how you do that, because conventionally we do it, of course, by traveling to some place, up to the mine, up the hills, and today you could actually do it remotely, and it's of course by itself already saves travel costs, and with all the travel costs, the respective CO2 emissions which are entailed to this. So in essence, the chain is quite long, right? With every decision you make, you practically impact eventually the entire asset management of the infrastructure at the site. And with that, of course, you make decisions on the necessary spare parts you eventually would buy and procure, the inventory you have, and everything you can reduce there, aside from the pure operation. Everything you can reduce also in asset management is practically an input, a contribution to our very ambitious climate goals I think we have to accomplish for the safety and the good of the planet.
That's for sure. Yeah, and we will go deeper on that on the next interviews in Siemens Minerals Week. But Sebastian, I would like to go deep in another issue. Which development areas do you see in the digital mine arena for further contribution to sustainability?
Yeah, so I think this is a huge topic. There's a variety of things which come around and which are through to development and activities. And I think there was a recent study out of McKinsey who basically reported that if you wanted to accomplish net zero emissions in 2050, the entire CapEx spendings even have to increase by 60% compared to where we are today. So there's a lot of money on the table, which we need to look at, and of course invest wisely in order to make the impacts we're looking for. And I think if we look at us ourselves, like large drives applications from Siemens, already with our core portfolio, we are basically a green tech company, and in a lot of spaces, green tech is only in development. If you think about hydrogen solutions, for example, as one of the key game changers to come in the future. And with our portfolio, we're already there. So we are well positioned. There's already proven capabilities for this. And at the same time, also digital, there need to be a lot of investment to push this forward. And as you remember, we talked about the transparency and the empowerment for automated and better decision making. And very good examples for that aspect of how we improve on products is, for example, in how we report on CO2 emissions across the product life cycle. Because CO2 emissions already start while they are generated, produced, like a motor drive even. And then, of course, over its life cycle, the CO2 emissions basically need to be traceable in terms of what it brings by its birth out of the cradle. And of course, along the moments and times when it's operating, the planet actually creates a certain addition of CO2 footprint. And of course, that's something very at the core of every operator to have a full transparency of that. The motors and drives solutions have to support this.
Right.
And of course, all these CO2 footprints then can be steered. They can be, to a certain level, also be controlled. And of course, they can be reported and presented also in an auditable fashion. And I think that's in all these dimensions of being a net zero carbon footprint company in the long run, which many companies have as a target, is a very essential lever to be implemented.
That's right.
Maybe a second example, which goes away from features and technology, is about business models and how companies operate and how they collaborate in the ecosystem. And I think here a very nice, interesting example of what you probably see more over the time is energy performance contracting, because many applications which are already today in the field, they have the opportunity potential to be revamped, retrofitted, and made more efficient and more effective. And for customers and operators, of course, normally CapEx spend is a burden. And I mentioned the McKinsey number earlier. And in a different business model, this can be smoothened out for customers and operators, because it becomes a more as a service model, which of course has a less heavy burden on CapEx spendings, and then makes this more an OpEx transaction for the customer, where he actually has the full benefit of profiting from a more energy efficient and more energy effective application he's entertaining in his operational plan.
Yeah. Sebastian, my last question is about the past. I was checking out the 2020 interview with you here in Siemens Minerals Week. We were just starting at the pandemic. We knew nothing, almost nothing about the COVID-19. And you said back then that people was adapting fast to this new scenario in terms of digitization and new technologies, about this new scenario in order to develop these new technologies. What can you say about these 2 years in terms of developing all these new technologies and a new way of work in terms of these new tools?
I think it's probably no doubt and secret that the pandemic has driven a lot the kind of attitude and mindset and how we do collaborate virtually all together and how people tend to work. I think the last 2 years really have shown that, especially in the normal work environments. Of course, operationally, there's still a difference if you have to entertain and do work on site. But I think the openness and the level of mental adoption, it has been increasing. And I think there's a much more drive and momentum now, also in the industrial space, to really go into these transformative technologies and really make the impact count. And as you remember, from the discussions last time, this is quite a transformative effort, because it requires change, and change is not so easy for none of us, right?
For sure.
And this kind of adoption still has to come, and many people, I believe, have shown this kind of ability, of course. And I think it's quite exciting to see this going forward as well.
Sebastian, thank you very much for your time and being here with us at the Siemens Minerals Week 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian.